Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. One day in the future, someone will create an IT management and reporting platform. You know, an all-in-one appliance that will detect and avoid performance panic attacks before they impact your business. A sort of master technology that would empower me to monitor millions of objects and automatically calculate trillions of baseline analytics across multiple networks with no degradation in system performance. Imagine, it would be like an all-in-one appliance with everything you need to monitor, collect, analyze, and report on your IT infrastructure. It would do everything. Well, almost everything, from troubleshoot network performance, improve capacity planning, and, of course, ensure reliable service delivery. Well, bam! The day is already here. Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, May 17, 2013, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantello. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Managing the performance of critical IT infrastructure is no longer a vision for the future, but a company recognized as one of the fastest-growing private companies by Deloitte in 2012 and by Inc. the year prior. And at 2012, Gartner recognized them as a cool vendor in service provider infrastructure. Up to the Tech Talk, don't let big data overwhelm you. It's all about SevOne and how it monitors millions of network elements across all monitoring technologies, and if you like, can even display critical alerts on your smartphone. As we talk advanced performance monitoring with the company's Chief Technology Officer, Vess Bakalov. Vess is one of the co-founders of SevOne and is responsible for leading the company's product development and design and overall vision of technology architecture. Prior to SevOne, Vess served in a number of senior technology positions at Bank One, including Assistant Vice President and Network Architecture. He also led the network management team for the credit card services division of the company, which was the largest issuer of Visa credit cards in the U.S. During his time at Bank One, Vess also taught undergraduate and graduate courses as an adjunct professor of computer science at the University of Delaware. Vess began his career as a technical advisor for a fast-growing CLEC. There he led the design and engineering effort behind that company's first DSL deployment. He was also in charge of architecting and developing the network management and instrumentational strategy for the firm. If you depend on IT infrastructure to be mission critical and want to avoid, well, panic attacks, then this is a tech talk you cannot afford to miss because it could impact your business, and that's not good. It's performance monitoring with SevOne co-founder and Chief Technology Officer, Vess Bakalov. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Vess, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, how are you doing, Frank?
Well, I got to tell you that after having an opportunity to research a little bit about the company and about the subject, I can't wait to get into it. I think our listening audience are going to be pretty much amazed. I think we know and understand the complexities of the interrelationships between platforms and different levels of technologies. I think you can almost describe them as layers and tentacles. And I think that most of us, when we're involved in that kind of an environment, automation kind of takes over in terms of being a confidence that says, it's working, and it's always going to be working. I don't really have to worry about it until, yikes, it isn't working. What happened? And everybody kind of panics. So tell us a little bit about how all of that works and what you guys are doing to prevent that kind of problem from happening.
Sure. Well, SevOne is a network performance management system, and I guess what used to be called network performance management system, but it has evolved over time, and now we think of it more as an end-to-end IT infrastructure management system. We collect data, mostly performance data, from devices across the entire gamut, from virtualized servers, switches, networks, all the way into very specialized domains, like, let's say, a 4G network. We have several customers operating some of the largest ones in the world, and cable companies, etc. So what SevOne really does is it's capable of collecting at a very high frequency data from very large networks across many different protocols, many different types of devices, and irregardless of the technology it's used, it displays a single picture on a single pane of glass that an operator can access and very quickly get to the bottom of one of these issues that we don't like affecting our digital experiences every day.
Is it something like a bot that goes into a system and identifies that, or is it a case where you have to go in and do sort of a situation analysis and break down every aspect of a network to identify each component and then adjust the software to that component? I mean, how does it relate to each one of the parts of the infrastructure? I'm assuming individually, but yet you're saying it gathers all the data from every single aspect. Which comes first? Does it automatically do that, or do you go in and analyze it and set it in motion, if you will?
Right. Well, it's a two-step process. So first it needs to find out what's out there. So we call that discovery. Mm-hmm. So the system goes and starts interrogating various pieces of the infrastructure. And you can do this in many different ways. Usually it ends up being you give us a bunch of subnets, and then the system starts interrogating every single IP and saying, hey, who are you? What can you tell me about yourself?
Wow.
So that way, let's say we hit a server. We say, well, what kind of server are you? And we like Linux, Windows. Then we say, okay, fine. If you're a Linux server, let's say, you probably have hard drives. How many of those, etc. So we learn about the device and enumerate all the different components it has. After that happens, every minute or so, the system would go in and say, hey, Linux server, how is your hard drive dev/SDA doing? And we give us information. And then how about dev/SDB? How about your CPU? So we collect this data every minute and collects in the system. Now, as soon as we do this, sort of the big data piece of the puzzle kicks in, and we start doing analysis. There is the most obvious static thresholding. So if I'm using more than 90% of my hard drive, let me know, and an alert will be generated and sent to the operator. Pretty straightforward stuff. But then there is dynamic thresholding. The system dynamically learns the behavior of every single component. And in certain cases, this could be literally hundreds of billions of metrics, which we're continuously analyzing to understand what their behavior over time is. And we get data such as percentage deviations, standard deviations, etc. Now, it gets to be interesting because operators in a NOC hate two things. The first one, which they hate the most, is missing an alarm. Something happens, something really bad happens, and they don't know about it until the user calls. That's the worst thing that can happen. The second worst thing that can happen is the system tells them something's wrong and nothing is wrong. So they're wasting their time running around chasing ghosts. So those are the two main problems the system needs to be able to solve.
So
tell you the truth.
From a primitive standpoint, as it relates to social media and the current big data craze that's going on, they talk about pattern detection. Is there a case where this thing starts telling you not only where there's a potential problem, but anticipates something happening in the future that might be a case where, I know, say, for example, when they're doing tractor trailers and they have satellite connections to the engines that actually will tell the driver in advance that the transmission is beginning to wear out and it's about to break. And not only does it tell him that, it tells him exactly how far he's got to go to get to a place where he can fix it. Is it headed in that direction, or does it already do that?
Well, it's definitely heading in that direction. And, we're adding new capabilities every day. But an example, for instance, would be, let's say, a server every day, or even, let's say, every Monday, between 3 and 4 o'clock, is running the CPU very predictably in the 30 to 40% range. And that's what it does at that time. Suddenly we see it going up to 70%. Nothing is wrong. I mean, everything is still running fine, but it's a large enough exception for us to be able to tell an operator with a warning message like, hey, by the way, look at this guy, something interesting is happening. So, and the operators obviously can fine-tune these things to their sensitivity of noise. But yes, we can essentially predict in a sense that, or at least warn in a sense that, hey, this is something abnormal is occurring. we can also do certain things around an adjacent discipline to performance management called capacity planning. So we can give you some idea about how much time do you have before a link or a CPU or a hard drive becomes saturated. You know, we can say, hey, you have about, at this trend that you're moving, you have about, let's say, 80 days before your SAN goes up. And that hopefully gives the user some idea of what they need to do to plan for that eventuality.
Well, and obviously, I mean, it's almost naive to say it. Those are from a technology standpoint, extremely important advantages from a business standpoint. Just the ability to stay live and stay active means you get a chance to stay in business. And in some cases, I'm sure, because one of the things I want to explore with you is the kind of customers and the industries that you're involved in. But obviously, you know, if you're dealing in, say, global currency or something to that effect, and you've got to be real 100% of the time, that technology component, that performance component, translates into competitive business. It isn't just about staying alive and being efficient from a technology standpoint. It's downright competitive advantage as far as the service is concerned. Deal with us a little bit about the idea of the kinds of industries. What specific industries or say the global drivers that are really benefiting from this kind of stuff? And how obviously with all of the news I'm hearing about you guys, it's adding to your success. Maybe go into a little bit about that for our audience.
Sure. Well, you know what? I mean, the interesting thing about this is how similar certain verticals that are normally quite distinct begin to look once you start looking at the infrastructure. For instance, the fact is that between a pharmaceutical and a bank, there isn't that much difference in the kind of equipment they're running and the kind of SLAs they have. Mm-hmm. Now, the bank, like you pointed out yourself, is extremely concerned about being able to trade at very high rates. High-frequency trading has been in the news. Many of our customers have chosen SevOne because of our ability to collect data at extremely high frequencies and analyze it very, very quickly in real time in microseconds. And they're talking to us about nanoseconds now, which is getting in the realm of science fiction. I mean, the speed of light to cross in 1 nanosecond, a light beam would cross 20 centimeters, so around 8 inches. So this is
but
the
I'm over
we're talking about.
Don't lose your train of thought because but I got to interject because I have to laugh where you're frustrated by the speed, but you're the dealer in it. You're causing a good part of the problem by having this advanced technology capability. But you're, I can see where, we often say in a much primitive world that we operate in, but everything is the same, only different. That once you pull back the onion skin enough back, everybody's basically kind of trying to do the same thing, but the content or the product or the digital distribution is maybe different. But continue on. Tell us again about the speed, because now we're talking about what is the engaging the now. Because if you've got that kind of ability to know and to communicate at that speed, it almost goes back to what's news. What's information at that stage.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, this is something that is adjacent to our trends, but the big financial companies are fighting to have their servers located as close to the trading floor as possible. Yeah. Be able to get a few nanoseconds of edge over their competitors so they can arbitrage faster. But the availability of the infrastructure and its capability to execute trades at the rate they believe it is what we measure every day and help them plan for as they go forward. Now, and that's the banks. Now, very similarly, you have pharmaceutical companies, and many of them are customer of ours, and those guys have supply chains that are vital to the lives of thousands of people, which needs tremendous reliability. And oftentimes, the infrastructure they're running over is very similar to that of the banks. The SLAs are similar, and the stakes, I mean, I think the pharmaceuticals got them beat, but, a trader on the floor of the Wall Street will probably disagree with me, but, it's a lot of money or human life, and it needs to run on time. Every time you have an interruption in the supply chain of drugs, obviously it makes the national news, and that's the last thing these guys want to happen.
Well, the other side of it is that with the hybriding of everything and the convergence of everything and reaching out, say, 10 or 20 years, that's almost ridiculous to go out that far because there's no telling. I think the word disruptive, as far as disruptive technologies, you used to hear it infrequently. Now it's a case where I think you hear just about every day in every vertical someone's talking about some new approach, and it disrupts the whole infrastructure. Where do you see, how does this end up? Where does it go? I mean, at some point, what's the future look like? And obviously, I think you guys are in a catbird seat. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to ask you what role you're going to play in the future, but at the same time, I'm thinking, are you guys public, or do you you're looking for investors? Because this sounds like you guys are a rocket ship looking for a place to land. I mean, this is incredible. Tell us a little bit about the future.
Yeah, the industries are really converging. You have some of the biggest disruptive players on the market right now, I would say, is, let's say, the 4G industry, with delivering ever more bandwidth to our mobile devices and allowing us to do more and more. The technology behind that is actually quite different from everything else we're doing, and being able, again, to manage it side by side with the traditional infrastructure is another interesting challenge out there. But as far as the future and where SevOne is heading, I'm still extremely happy to share that we secured a huge investment with Bain Capital in December of last year. We were able to close a $150 million round. So,
congratulations. That's great. Well, I can understand it, though. I mean, obviously, but that's congratulations. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. So that was a tremendous boon to us as a company, the faith that this major company, this really, really great partner put in us to helping us secure the investment, but as well as working with us towards the future of the company is really giving us a ton of confidence and inspiring us to think of what it is that we can achieve now with this kind of backing. So we're looking forward to the next 2 to 3 years to continue doing more of what has made us successful. The main tenets behind SevOne, the thing that has allowed us to secure some of the global leaders as customers, both in finance, in pharmacy, in service providers, and 4G, etc., cable, is our speed at scale. SevOne is pretty much unrivaled in our ability to continue to provide fast, reliable reports, even as we manage infrastructures with literally millions of elements. So it's not simply 10 or 50 routers or a few hundred servers, which we do great, by the way, as well. It's nothing to sneer at, because that's what the backbone of the internet is made of. But even as we go up into the level of, let's say, Comcast, we can still provide reports in hundreds of seconds when it's necessary. So being able to exploit this advantage to continue to grow the company at the current rate of 80 to 100% year over year is really what we're looking for over the next 3-4 years.
Well, you want to sit back and say, well, sure, who doesn't want to look at 80 to 100% over the next couple of years? But to hear what you're saying and to think in terms of some of the, we're blessed with an eclectic perspective, and we get an opportunity to talk to so many different thought leaders. You begin to kind of feel a trend, and I think probably one of the things, and unfortunately we're quickly running out of time here, but one of the things I'd be interested in hearing is, do you see yourself, and from my using my terminology, are you an application or are you an economy? Are you looking to continue to facilitate other people like a Comcast, or does Comcast ultimately get absorbed into you?
Oh, no. We're certainly going to begin to continue being a part of the ecosystem that allows service providers and enterprises to deliver the great services to their customers that, we're seeing more and more today. Basically, it takes, there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? But in many ways, it takes an ecosystem to deliver quality products to customers. Just like, for instance, Apple cannot deliver a voice call to a customer without having a carrier, without having a network system manufacturer, etc. It would be difficult for us to claim that we can become an end services provider. That being said, we are working to make our system ever more accessible to more and more people. We have now opened a free download, so anyone can go to the website and get
Great.
a small version, but fully featured version of the system and try it out in their home, in their lab, even in small companies. And it will be exactly the same stuff that Comcast is using today to manage their network.
Well, and at the risk of, when I said Comcast, I meant in hypothetical and a futuristic environment and not necessarily one of your existing clients. So I apologize if I put you on the spot by using that as a part of the analogy. But where I was headed was 10 or 20 years out. I mean, the fact that your Apple analogy, I mean, I understand that's true today. But can it exist in literally a black hole as things become more and more converged? And who controls and it's hypothetical. Obviously, we're going into the ether here and talking about what could be, but it certainly centers around what appears to be the core competency and the core perspective that you have, because at some point, it's sort of like it's the brain, right? I mean, you're kind of the brain. If you really want to narrow it down to an analogy that Gates used to use about the human body, if it's all about that interconnection, at some point it's going to be about this intuitive sense of being able to predict patterns, or in this case, predict events in some cases or another. Yep. Well, Vess, I want to end it on a point where we get back to reality and focus on who you are and what you're doing now. Let's tell our audience to end it now because we're coming to a quick close, but what are the 3 competitive differentiators from you and anyone else that's even remotely involved in what you're doing? Sure.
Well, the main thing that SevOne, like I mentioned earlier, does that no one really does as well as we do is our speed of scale. So as we look at, as we continue to grow an installation, from a few hundred servers to a few thousand to tens and even hundreds of thousands, or routers or switches. There's basically network connected IT components. The speed of the system doesn't slow down, and this is, I think, an inherent feature of all successful future applications. The smooth scalability needs to be there because, just like you said, no one predicted 20 years ago where we're going to be today in terms of interconnectedness, and I think we'll be surprised, when we look back 20 years. So having the ability to scale through all the barriers that are basically thrown up. Just think about software-defined networks and virtual networks that are one of the hot trends today. Yeah. Suddenly, you end up with 3 networks instead of 1. There's 3 times more stuff to manage. If your old system couldn't grow by 300% smoothly, you're suddenly stuck. So that's one. Another one is being able to show data from very different data sources on the same screen in a very unified fashion. So the fact that you're getting data from a Linux server, a Windows server, a CPU from a router, or a node B in a 4G network shouldn't look different when a human is expecting to see essentially the same data. So normalizing these extremely different network devices, the network components, in a uniform-looking report, that normalization capability is very, very important. Lastly, it's ease of use. I mean, who has the time nowadays to learn to climb a steep learning curve? It is simply we don't have the luxury to learn systems that are not intuitive. So every day we struggle with the challenge of how can we make it ever easier for the human being to both learn it, and also how can we do as much of the work ourselves? How can we do the analysis and present them with the actionable choices that they have to make their infrastructure run better?
Well, I tell you, Vess, there's been over the course of years, literally hundreds of opportunities for us to talk to thought leaders and to hear about things that are evolving in front of us that are representing not only the ability to be globally competitive in today's environment, but are literally building the pathway to the way things are going to be done in the future. I got to tell you that anyone that's listened to this conversation today has got to be saying the same thing and thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Vess, you guys are amazing, and what you're describing is really not only the answer for what's going on today, but quite possibly the underpinning or the infrastructure of what's going to make all of the change happen for tomorrow. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today on Tech Talk.
Well, thank you very much as well. Have a great day.